Welcome back. Now, in the last class, the last video you watched, we kind of generally I introduced myself, I introduced what public sector accounting is all about, and those areas of the syllabus. So in this class, we'll be talking around, public sector generally. Now we'll be going to what public sector is all about. Now, you remember when we started the last class, I explained to you that we are doing public sector accounting and finance. Now, let's separate it. Before we start learning the issues of accounting or finance, let's first learn what is public sector. Now, with the mention of the word public sector, it means that there are sectors, and public one is one of those sectors. Yes, there are sectors. There is what we call the private sector, which a lot of people belong to. And the major thing that drives the private sector is profit. That means everybody in private sector is adding value. Basically, they are trying to collect a value from you for profit-making reasons. They don't do it for no other purpose. Now, and then we have the public sector. The public sector actually exists. Basically, it's a non-profit to provide what we call general goods. It's not driven majorly by profit, but in between these two is what we call the NGO sector. Now, this sector is not driven by profit, is also, though driven by non-profit, it does not really exclude anybody. It's based on humanitarianism. That's what that one is based on. Now, so what is public sector? Now, a lot of people can have a lot of definition, but to me, the simplest one is that the public sector is the sector controlled by government. Sector controlled by government. The question is, what is government? Now, government is the collection of people or institution that we use as a tool or vehicle to manage the resources or the official functions of collection of those people. So it can be a state, it can be a local government, it can even be a group of people. If, for example, a class comes together, you decide to select one person that will direct the affairs of the class, maybe one or two people, they form what is called government. So, like I said, in this class, we are talking about some of those fundamental principles. Those things we'll be talking about, we'll be using those terminologies we'll be using in this class that you should get familiar with. So you should get familiar when I mention what the word government is, what it should be. Now, a lot of people sometimes contradict some other issues around government with what is government. Those things, this is now going to your basic classes of government, is things like what is the arms of government. What are those arms of government? Those are the various areas that government has formed to use it to manage itself. So we have what we call the legislature, which is in charge of making laws, legislatures, in case I don't get it. And then we have the executive, which is empowered to execute whatever the people want. So the representation of the people are here. They come up with plans and ideas and all that. And then these guys at this point, following, they do execute it. And then we have the judiciary. These guys, what they do is basically they interpret whatever laws that have been set by this and implemented by these other guys. In case there's a misunderstanding, they get to help us to interpret it. Another thing that one of the terminology we use in our news government is also things around the system of resource control. I'm sure my people from the South will be interested in this resource control. How is resources being controlled in government? Now, resources can be controlled either by what we call unitary system. This is where the center controls all the resources, or we have what we call federation. In this case of federation, the various confederating, or no, not the word confederating, federating units, that's what federating units come together, and they control their resources and are supposed to pull part of these resources to the center. And that's why we have something called federal government in Nigeria. Now, I'm not going to go into the debate running a federation system or unitary system in Nigeria, but if you note our history, you know that when we first had independence, we had something called a unitary system of government, and then we later morphed into what we call a federation in Nigeria, which is what we're now running at the moment. Now, in the next class, we'll be talking about why do we even need government? We have explained what government is, what are the sectors about, why do we need government? That's what we're talking about in the next class.